back to another episode of Retail War Games. Today we have Justin Drage, Vice President of Solutions to Go.
You do have massive shoes.
I do. It's
What size is your foot?
Stupid. 16.
Holy
Do you
cow.
have to like special order your shoes?
Yeah,
really?
it's awful. So if you see me wearing ugly shoes, you'll know that it's like it's all that's available. It's like Chuck Taylors and these loafers. Is
That's
basically what I can buy.
crazy, 16s.
And New Balance. Like now that New Balance is cool, it's good for me because I was always buying New Balance, but they weren't cool. So
Now they're
I feel
in.
Like, yeah, I feel like the
Now,
trends have caught
yeah,
up
you
to
are
me.
very trendy. I love New Balance.
Yeah.
I think I have like 4 pairs now.
Now that they're trendy, though, they probably won't make a size 16.
Or
just
they'll
go away
be
from
hard
it.
to find.
Yeah, they'll be
Well,
very
that's-
hard to find.
You'll have to
Yeah,
like
it's awful.
Come on, New
Big
Balance.
feet.
Get your head in the game.
16. Do your kids have?
No,
Are they tall and?
So I'm 6 foot, almost 6'5" ish. My wife's 5'1", so
Oh
my
my gosh,
kids
wow.
are like,
Very?
yeah,
Are they, what are their heights? Average?
they're
Taller,
just like
shorter?
average. I think my son's 16, so he's probably like 5'10" or something. So he probably has a little bit of a growth spurt. And my daughter stopped growing in like the 6th grade. I think she's like 5'7" or 8" or something. She's not very tall. She's taller than her mom, but everybody
It's
is.
taller than me. 5'7" I feel like is
Is
the
that tall?
perfect.
Maybe she's not that tall. I don't know.
How
That's
tall
like
are
a
you?
good height for a girl. I'm
it?
5'4".
5'4".
And I feel like it's a little short.
Yeah.
I think you
But
have 5
5'1".
inches from a male to a female, so I think you'd be 5'9". Right? Is that
If
how you
I
do
was
it?
a male.
Is
Yeah.
that the equation?
I think
All
so.
I know is being like 6'4", 6'5" is awful. If I could be like 6'1", 6'2", that feels like the perfect
Well, if I
height.
could have 3 of your inches,
Yeah,
we could
I would
both
give
be-
them away.
We could
easy.
both be happy.
Easy. 3 of my inches and then 3 shoe sizes would be perfect.
What size is your foot?
10.
10.
I'm just,
Yeah, we could just both move to a 13.
you know
13.
what?
Yeah,
Call it
just
even.
Meet in the middle.
Yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat. Yeah, it's just like going to the movies or a jazz game or flying or anything. It's awesome.
Is flying
It's
the
just-
worst part of it?
Yeah, the nice thing is once you fly a lot, then you start getting upgraded, but then you realize like, oh wow, if I have to go back and sit and coach
I'm not
anytime
doing
soon,
this.
this is going to be
You're
brutal.
in the exit row
Especially
only,
a middle
probably.
seat. Like it's just so impactful on everybody around me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's not fun.
They should make a row in the airplane for tall.
Yeah.
You know, like
What
Yeah.
really
certain
sucks is like when
section-
you're in coach
That's right.
and then like somebody super short took the emergency row and you're like, seriously, like I actually need to sit there, please.
so
Can
when
we
they
trade? I'll
ask
pay
for
you.
volunteers in the
Yeah.
exit row, are you always the first?
100%. Yeah.
You're like, see ya, you can help
Yeah.
with the
I'll
kids.
take
I'm
this, please.
exit row.
So could
That's
you ever
funny.
dunk?
Yeah, I might still be able to, but maybe not. It's
Are
been
you
a couple years.
serious?
A couple years ago, I tried again just to see like can I
No
still dunk, and I
way.
could, but it's been a few years.
Did you play basketball in high school?
Yeah,
and-
but I blew out my knee, so I had to stop doing that.
Do you ever catch an alley oop?
No,
dunk?
no, I didn't have that kind of jumping ability, but I
Dunk
could
it?
like just squeak it in.
That's good enough, man.
Just squeak it. Yeah, it
I- I'll-
counts.
oh yeah.
I'll count it.
I stopped dunking when I was 15, and it was 9-foot hoops, and then it was a foot short.
Well, we grew up in
Great
the
word for it.
the era of dunk ball. You know, you
Everything
go to
was
the
dunk
elementary
ball.
school and go play
I
on the
know.
9-foot hoops. Yeah,
I know.
that was the best.
What was this? It was some comedian I was listening to. I don't remember who it was. It was like Brian Regan or someone. And they're talking about how in baseball, there's no limit to like how far away a home run is from the plate. So it like varies like by like 60%. So like some are like 300 yards, some are like 450 yards, or 450 feet, not yards. And they're thinking, man, what happens if they did that in basketball? And you like show up in Chicago, and
And the hoops are just
now all of a
higher.
sudden you have a 7-foot hoop. You're like, what the heck? And it's like, what's going on here?
playing our small ball lineup today.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That's what they should do.
Yeah, that would be crazy. The 3-point line has moved in. Just a random metrics moved around.
I'll tell you what I can't do is I can't skateboard or ski or snowboard. Anything on wheels.
You're not
just-
in.
No.
I
I'll
can-
just fall on my face.
been
Skiing
so
is not
long.
on wheels.
Yeah, that's
Well,
yeah.
it's the same concept.
Maybe that's
You've
why you
lived
can't
in
do
Utah
it.
your whole life and you've never skied.
You know-
or you have, but you're not
Look,
good at it.
I grew up in a family that didn't like have any like nice equipment.
It's
And so
an
I went-
expensive
when
thing,
I went
for sure.
once when I was like 14, some like dad up the street is like, Jeremy, let me take you. And I took my Levi's, and then it just froze the whole time.
Oh no.
And that's the last time
And I
you
was
went.
like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my
Winter
life.
sports are out.
Yeah. You have to have the right stuff to make
Yeah.
it the
Oh, yeah.
experience it should be.
Turn
But
me off forever.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I think anybody would be turned off if they had
How,
that.
how did you get into Gadget Gaurd?
So it's a weird story. So I was working in the wireless industry for, at that time, Spring Mobile, and I quit with a buddy of mine to open up some T-Mobile kiosks in California. And what we realized is that screen protection was kind of a big thing here. Invisible Shield had launched, and we were referring a bunch of clients to Invisible Shield from our Spring stores to get screen protectors put on. But in California, nobody had any idea. So we started working with a competitor to Invisible Shield to sell their products at our T-Mobile stores. And it just quickly became a huge part of our business. And so we tried to license their brand and open up kiosks there because we thought, oh, well, we'll beat all the competition and we'll just own the California market. We'll open up kiosks ourselves and we'll just do this. And they kind of got greedy with us and they wanted a lot of money. So I was just like, you know, what the heck? Like, if they can do it, we can do it. So I taught myself how to do some graphic design to create the designs. We bought some equipment. We bought a bunch of, back then it was films. It wasn't glass. It was
That's
just
right.
like almost like the clear bra type film.
Yeah.
So we bought a bunch of films from suppliers like 3M and we just tested and trialed. We just set up shop in my house, literally in my bay window of my house.
You were really early on in creating that company.
It's the classic story of like, if I would have known how difficult it was going to be, I would have never started, but we were just idiot. We were so young.
How old were you?
I must have been like 25 or 26, which
You were
feels really young
married?
to me now. I got married at 18, so yeah, I was married.
And you had kids or not
married?
yet?
I had a couple kids, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, so we had this T-Mobile business that was bringing in the money, and then the Gadget Gaurd stuff. We were just plowing money into it, trying to figure out our lane. Finally got it to work, found designs that work, opened up some kiosks, and then realized, you know what, maybe we don't want to run a bunch of kiosks where we have to be open mall hours and deal with labor issues, and they're a few hundred miles away in California. Maybe what we should do is try to sell these to other retailers that are good at doing that. So we kind of found our lane and just focused on selling to other retailers. And we literally, those years, it was ridiculous. I crisscrossed the country in cars, me and my partners, and just taught retail sales associates how to sell and install screen protectors. Because before then,
nobody did it.
No wireless stores were
I remember
installing.
how early on it was. And those margins had to be insane.
It was crazy. Yeah, it was the best because we were just manufacturing and we were cut to demand. So we didn't have to, we didn't have to go to China or anything or import products. It was just everything was stateside. We had a team and at first we were in my house. Then we moved to like a corporate office building similar to this. And then finally, maybe like 2 years later, we went into a warehouse. Like we were just using people's free space that they offered us while we grew the business. But Invisible Shield, they created the category for everybody, and we kind of drafted them. But what we created is the retail portion of it. Nobody was selling in retail. They were just doing their own stuff at that time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just crisscrossing the country, teaching people how to sell and install screen protection. Back then with water, it was just like everybody's like, this is sketchy. I don't want to get my phone wet.
No, I know. Must have fun.
And it
Send
probably
to
was
Syrian.
sketchy because they probably weren't.
Yeah, it was. No,
What
they
was
weren't.
the
Like
first
now,
phone?
No,
it's,
nothing
yeah,
was.
now
Everything
it's
was
not.
busting.
What was the first phone that was like popular?
So-
Was it like the iPhone 3?
Yeah, well, we launched
Oh, yeah.
in like 2007, 2008. So we launched right when the iPhone was like becoming a big
The
thing. We were
first
so
thing.
lucky. Everything about that business was just so lucky. Our timing was ridiculous. And it blew up to the point that we were like, what are we doing with this T-Mobile business? Like we just walked away from it. We had
No way.
we had one of our own stores and then we co-ran a couple other stores for a partner, and it just wasn't worth the time or effort to focus on that, where Gadget Gaurd was just kind of exploding. And so we torched that and just went full-fledged into Gadget Gaurd and had a nice little run there.
How long were you in your house?
We manufactured in my bay window of my front room for about half a year until my wife was sick of the neighbors calling, asking what was
Entrepreneur.
going on in the house.
Yep.
So I finished the basement. We moved downstairs into the basement. We were there for maybe another 6 or 12 months. And then we had just a local connection that had just an office inside of an office building. And he's like, you can set up shop here. So we moved it's called a plotter. Like we had a plotter that we cut the screens on. And he's like, you can move your plotter and stuff in here. So 3 of us crammed in one office.
Wow.
And we're just working in there for maybe like a year or so. And I remember we got our first warehouse. It was way out west by airport number 2 in West Jordan. And it cost $950 a month. And I just I couldn't sleep. I was so stressed. I didn't know how we were going to afford it. I set up an eBay shop because I was like, I know what we're going to do. I'm going to sell on eBay. I'm going to master this. I'm going to get really good selling screen protection on eBay. It's going to pay for the rent.
And did it?
And it did, and
I was
more.
gonna say,
But it was just so
eBay or
dumb. It was so quaint at the
Marketplace.
time. I'm like, we'll just figure this out. I just need to pay for the rent so that we can go out and try to close more and more retailers. But yeah, it was by far, I've never made less money in my life, and I've never had more fun doing anything than those first years.
Oh yeah.
Starting Gadget Gaurd. It was
So
the
what
best.
was your strategy from, like, what percentage of your business was direct to consumer, and then what percentage was retail?
It was really low direct to consumer. We were lucky. We had all these connections at Spring Mobile where the three of us had all worked. So we had really good connections there. Back then, Spring Mobile wasn't what it became. I think when we worked there, it was like 50 or 60 stores, which was still decent sized for the industry, but it wasn't, 1,500 stores like it became.
Yeah.
So we had some connections there, and they gave us a shot. They said, hey, listen, yeah, we'll pick up your products. We'll sell them through our stores. We'll help you figure it out. And so we really relied on them and kind of grew with them. But we had a really hard time getting other retailers on board. Everybody was afraid of water. So that next phase was really difficult. So we stuck with Spring for quite some time. I think we had them alone we had maybe a couple other retail clients that were really small, but they were a primary customer for quite some time. And then we supplemented that with the direct-to-consumer stuff, mainly on eBay, Amazon. We weren't selling much on our own site, but yeah, we were really just relying on the marketplaces.
Yeah, it was super early on. So what was kind of was the strategy first to go into like cell phone carrier shops and then eventually get into other larger CE shops, or what was kind of the goal?
Yeah, we were open to anything, but we were most familiar with the wireless retail stores. So that's really where we spent our time. What ended up happening, and it's kind of funny looking back now because it really propelled and saved our business from probably its demise, is Spring came to us at a certain point and they said, listen, we want to buy your company. And I said, that's great that you want to buy my company, but I don't want to sell. So I think they came, we kind of went back and forth with the buyer maybe 2 or 3 times and turned them down. And then we just kept hitting it. We knew we needed to get distribution, and we just couldn't get any of the distributors to really believe in us. At the time, the 2 main distributors for the space were Superior and Tesco, and we just couldn't crack into either of them for the life of us. So the last time Spring came to us, they basically threatened. They said, listen, if you don't sell to us or allow us to partner, then we're going to do this ourselves. And I said, listen, if you want to do this yourselves, have at it, because I've regretted every day starting this outside of the fun. Like, it was way more difficult than I thought. But we're actually ready to maybe partner. Like, we don't want to sell our whole business, but we'll partner with you if you can help us get into distribution. And they were buying from both Superior and Tesco at the time. So I said, listen, you have what we want. You have these relationships with these distributors. We need to get into distribution, and we can't get the time of day with them. If you can help us get into distribution, then we'll partner with you and we'll do it. So we ended up exiting to them. I guess it wasn't an exit to the last one, but we sold part of the company to them and then ended up exiting the entire business to them. I think I stuck around the longest of the 3 that started. I was there for like 5 years or so.
Man, what a victory.
Yeah, it was really fun.
So what's the expected turn rate if you're successful in mobile for like cell phone cases and accessories? What's deemed a good turnaround?
You mean
as far as units sold per store per week?
Yeah, it really varies, because there's some stores, like anything else, there's like just dog stores that exist just to serve the community, and they're they may make a little bit of money, but they're definitely not the flagship stores. And then there's flagship stores. It's like, this is what the business is getting built behind. And it also varies depending on categories. The thing that I loved about screen protection in this industry, in the wireless industry, is that when you are the screen protector brand for a company, for a buyer, for a retailer, there's no competition. You're in there. Other people are trying to get in, but you're not having to compete for peg space with somebody that's making the same products. They tend to only carry one brand for screen protection. But something like cases, a retailer has to have options, because you're not going to want the same case as Anna's going to want. People have different likes. A screen protector is just a clear protector. So cases, you may have 5, 6, 7 different brands in one retailer that you're competing for, and you're trying to, on every sell you're competing for. So not that we planned it that way, but we got really lucky and we used that to our advantage. Once we got in the door, we knew we could lock them down and hold down that business and continue to grow. So our boats kind of rose with their success. As they continue to open up more stores and have success, we would prosper as well, because we were just kind of there along for the ride.
And you got lucky because you were the first really ones that were in the retail space for screen protecting, right? Expand your team's skill set and drive conversions. Volcanic Retail University offers specialized courses to keep your brand ahead in the retail game. Go to university.volcanicretail.io and apply code podcast50 for 50% off.
Yeah, at least in this space, Invisible Shield had much more success than we did. Like big retailers, they landed Best Buy, and that was just like the best account that you could possibly have. But everybody ignored this small channel that we were in.
Yeah.
We primarily competed with Invisible Shield, which then became Zag, and then it was Bodyguards at the time. Bodyguards had some good AT&T business, but everybody ignored the dealer channel. And since that's where we were most comfortable, that's kind of where our careers were born and where we'd come up, we just hit it so hard. And once we got distribution, the distribution really changed everything for us, because you basically, it's like a free opportunity to expand your sales force. When you get into distribution, you go land at the time like a Tesco, and they have 16 or 20 sales reps, and I can go in and do a lunch and learn and train these sales reps and show them how much margin there is for them to earn. And now they're my advocates, and they're talking to the customers. And it tends to be distribution talks to the customers way more often than brands talk to them. They just have more reason to. There's weekly shipments. There's, they may be supplying 10, 15, 20 brands versus I'm just one product line and one brand. So that was really the game-changing thing for us, is figuring out how to harness distribution to our advantage and grow.
Yeah, that's kind of the tricky part. I remember selling to D&H once, and obviously you sit and you educate their sales guys and bonus them out according to like what they can sell to the larger accounts. So it's interesting because in CE distribution, well, I guess in all distribution, what most brands don't realize is most distributors don't act as a sales agency, but they can do that for bigger brands.
Yeah.
And so I guess that was probably a big education part of, training up their employees, and obviously them becoming an advocate of your brand when you start, when they're speaking to Walmart or whoever they're going to speak to, they have some incentive to actually sell it.
Yeah, it was huge for us. And what we found is that most of our competitors just ignored the distributors and went directly to the customers, which works well for a lot of people, especially if you have a big sales force and you've been in the industry and you have connections. We had none of that. We had no sales force. We had no connections. We had nothing. We were basically just trying to figure out a way, scratch and claw our way into the industry. So we almost just fell into it by accident, that hey, these people show
That's
an interest.
nuts.
They're compensated on selling our products. Maybe we can just further incentivize them to prioritize having our conversations and bringing us to meetings. And it really worked. It helped out tremendously.
So did you just retire a little bit for a couple years before you went over to VoiceCom, or what ended up happening there?
Yeah, so I really wanted to branch out a bit. So I tried first I wanted to get into other products. I thought, screen protection at that time, after about 4 or 5 years, it was just becoming a commodity. And it should have been all along. It was so dumb. It was the easiest thing. I mean, I figured out how to do it. I taught myself how to create designs. I found the material. It wasn't that difficult. So started getting flooded. The prices started coming down. So I wanted to diversify in order to be able to land more business and continue to grow the company. But I didn't really have the support to diversify. So I made the decision that, hey, maybe this is my time. Maybe I'll exit and I'll go find something else to do. I really wanted to grow my network of buyers as well. We really had no success with big box retailers or with the carriers themselves. And so I got an offer from Casemate to go sell cases for them, and they were going to allow me to sell into carriers. I thought, well, this is great. This will be a great stop where I can go make some new buyer connections. It'll help build my my resume and my connections so I can whatever comes next. So I did that for about 11 months and then ended up going to VoiceCom after that.
VoiceCom, I don't know what they are. Maybe, I mean, they're large compared to a lot of companies, maybe 100 million, but they're nothing like the size of the company you're with now, Solutions to Go. But VoiceCom is a really good distributor. We've used them quite a bit in the past with a lot of brands that we brought in internationally. H. Butler, Orbit, others that have done quite well. But that was a great company.
Yeah, it was honestly my experience at VoiceCom. I was there for about a decade, and it was by far the most fun I've had not working for myself, and just the most success. When I joined, we were doing about $30 million, by far the smallest. At the time, Tesco was multi-$100 million a year. Superior was more private, but they were probably about the same. and so Voicecom was really just like low on the radar, but they were coming up. The reason why I made the choice, actually I had some offers from some other distributors, Tesco and Brightstar at the time. But the reason I went to Voicecom is just because when I was at Casemate, every customer that I would go into would say like, oh yeah, I buy my accessories from Superior, I buy them from Tesco. But Voicecom's my number 2, and I just kept hearing Voicecom, and I kind of known they were a customer of ours at Gadget Gaurd back in the day, so I'd kind of known, I knew the owner pretty well.
Good reputation company.
Yeah, and so I called him, and I was like, hey man, like, I keep hearing your name come up all over the place, that you're always like the second distributor that they use. And I just gave him props, like, really cool. If there's ever a chance for us to work together, this is when I was at Casemate, I'd love to take the opportunity and distribute Casemate products through you. But we need at that time, I couldn't make the decision. I had to have like an actual customer buying from Voicecom that required our products to go through there. So just kind of trying to be nice and maintain a network. Casemate at the time had a lot of financial difficulties, and so they laid off a bunch of us, myself included. I like to joke they fired me because it's way funnier. So Casemate fired me, and it was like the best thing that happened to my career. Voicecom called. Somehow the CEO heard the news and called and said, hey, we need to chat. And I was like, well, that's great. Like, I'll be at Tesco in like 2 weeks. I'm actually interviewing at Tesco just down the road from you. I'd be happy to bolt on a few days, and I'll drive up and meet with you. And the rest is history. I made the drive up, tagged it onto my Tesco interview, and ended up landing there. But when I started, we were doing about 30 million. I think when I ended, we were like kind of smack dab in the middle between 1 and 200 million a year. Yep. And during that time, we actually acquired Tesco. So yeah, we had a lot of success.
Insane. What a cool
What did that feel like? Because you had heard them like on the other side be the number 1 choice, and now you're...
It was weird because I loved working with Tesco when I was at Gadget Gaurd and Casemate. They helped me so much. But at the same time, now they were my sworn enemies. So I always think whenever I get to a company and I'm working, I think it's really helpful to create shared enemies within the company, and you kind of rally everybody behind a cause. So we had Project Barry Tesco, which I've never talked about publicly, but it was legit.
That's what it was called?
PBT. Yeah, we called it PBT. So for several years, we just had PBT, and it was, opportunities would come up, and we're like, well, who's their current distributor? Who are we competing with? And if it was Tesco, it was like we would just throw everything we had to win the business to try to take Tesco out. And Tesco's a publicly traded company, so over time you could kind of see their difficulties, and they also do network components and stuff like that, which was doing really well, but their accessory business was kind of having a rough time, and you could see it when they reported financials. So after a while, I started looking at it, and I'm like, man, their stock would improve if they gave this business away. We should inquire and see if they're willing to unload this business. And I was a little bit early. It was like 1.5 years, 2 years before we finally acquired them. But I kept really close tabs, and our executive team kept really close tabs on it.
Oh my gosh!
They ended up basically giving away. I mean, we basically bought it for asset value plus. I mean, it wasn't like a full giveaway, but we got such a great deal.
What year was this?
This was, gosh, my math is going to be so bad. It was maybe like somewhere between 5 and 7 years ago, I'd say, somewhere in that range.
2018.
Don't completely judge me on my time. Maybe not quite 5. It was probably like 2019. It was like pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was.
Yeah, they were
incredible.
They were a big name. I mean, so tell the audience a little bit of the differences between like the company you're with now and Tesco that really focus on specific mobile applications versus some of the other CE distributors like Winnet and Ingram Micro and D&H and Petra and all those guys.
Yeah, so the latter group that you rattled off, I mean, that's like the cream of the crop. I mean, these guys are doing just tens of billions of dollars a year in revenue at really, really slim margins most of the time. Yep. But they can move just about anything. You want to distribute a Samsung refrigerator? Great. Ingram Micro, let's go distribute that. Flat screen TVs, anything and everything. And they distribute wireless products and accessories as well. So they do just about everything, but it's extremely impersonal and non-value added for the most part. I'm not saying that's 100% across the board, but it's just a behemoth of a company. So getting the personalized attention for projects is really difficult, whereas the companies I've tended to work for tend to be more value added distribution opportunities, whether it's the sales team stuff that I mentioned before and just having a sales team that's out there pushing, or even kitting products, building shippers and displays and stuff for you, just really focused on adding value. And that was really the experience at Voicecom, and then now at Solutions to Go as well, where there's just so many opportunities and avenues, whether it's e-commerce marketplaces and integrating with APIs and EDI and stuff that brands generally don't have the experience or the sophistication necessary to be able to pull off without plugging a lot of money into their infrastructure. That's where a value-added distributor really comes in and can make a huge difference.
Now you're a VP of Solutions to Go.
Yeah, I recently took a gig at Solutions to Go, and Solutions to Go is a giant distributor, primarily in the gaming industry. They cover the gaming industry from Canada basically to Brazil, so all of the Americas, and super large distributor in gaming.
PlayStation.
Yeah, PlayStation, Microsoft, Xbox, Nintendo, that kind of stuff all over the Americas. And they really have a big ambition to get into the wireless industry. So I'm trying to help navigate and guide that and make us a player in the wireless industry.
Were you a PlayStation guy growing up?
I was a Nintendo Entertainment System guy because I'm super old.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it was Nintendo and then SNES. And I'm not great at video games, but I am proud. I taught myself how to play Fortnite so I could hang out with my kid.
There you go.
I'm terrible at it.
I do that with Battlefront with my kids. It's like, especially over Christmas break, it's like, all right, guys, let's do this.
Yeah, you have to meet them on their, on their level. He's not into like the basketball like I am or mountain biking like I am, but he's super into video games. So that's what we do to hang out. We play video games, and he basically carries me in every game, and I try to not embarrass him.
So on Solutions to Go, what are the biggest benefits for brands to using Solutions to Go?
Solutions to Go is a really interesting company and
behemoth.
Yeah, it's behemoth,
billion.
But very personal. It's huge revenue wise, but small teams internally, and just the ability and willingness to get stuff done, get projects done. So you've got huge ambitions and opportunities to get into digital distribution. So now a lot of gaming is going online, and so you're buying digital cards and stuff, but those still need to be distributed. They still need to make their way to the end retailer, whether it's e-commerce or physical, that's actually selling the product. So stuff like that's really interesting. And then what we found is it's just like the capabilities beyond just moving a box are really what separates us from our competition. And whether that's providing market support or building displays or packaging, or what's really become popular in wireless and I think for gaming as well is just bundling. So where you can buy a phone and it's bundled with some key accessories, and you've got to have it be retail ready, so it's got to have a nice box on the outside. Like that's stuff that you're not going to get a Samsung phone mixed with a Belkin charger that's created in a custom bundle from either one of those companies because they don't have a partnership. But as a distributor of both products, theoretically we sit in the middle and we can make that type of stuff happen.
One really cool thing that we were talking about before the pod is how Solutions to Go really kind of customizes the type of partnership they're having with brands. So going as low as, below 10% up to mid-teens on percentages, just really depends on what type of value add that you're going to be adding in. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's I have a lot of theories on distribution and where it fits for brands, especially internationally as well as in the US, because it's different and every brand has different requirements or different needs, I guess. In the US, you can skip distribution and sell direct to Best Buy or Walmart, and they'll take you in and you'll go through all of their their requirements, and you'll set up EDI and you'll do all this stuff, and it's very time consuming and painful. Or you can partner with any of these distributors that we've talked about, and they can do the work for you, and they'll take a little bit of money. Yeah, they have a vendor number, they have all this stuff, so it just kind of gives you a little bit of a head start. And then on the flip side of it, though, is as you start to bridge out and you go internationally, there's way more issues that pop up. Most brands are based here in the US, so you may have a facility where you can handle the logistics in the US to do it direct. Maybe you want to skip distribution here, but odds are you don't in Canada, or you don't in Latin America. You don't, it doesn't make sense for you to go build all these facilities and ship, because odds are your sales probably aren't going to be high enough in order to, to make up the difference in the costs. And then there's, all the penalties and fines if you don't do things the exact way the retailer wants to. There's just so much risk that goes into it. So depending on what the brand needs, the partnership can be flexible to basically serve just what you want. If you've got a fantastic relationship with Walmart and you're really tight with the buyer and you know exactly what their buying periods are and when the planogram's going to open up and what you want to present, and you're on, a weekly talking basis with them and you don't need sales support, fantastic. Like, we can carve that out. We have programs where we can just handle the logistics.
That's really
we can go
cool.
pick up your freight in China for you if you want. We can import it in. We can handle and help with all the duties. Similar if you want to expand into LATAM, but you don't know how to do the FX exchange and the currency trading and stuff like that. I mean, we accept payment, and I think it's like 15 different currencies or something like that, and that's all managed by our team so that we can deal without a bunch of blips when currencies spike or fall.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of benefit.
Stein Collection represents 3 award-winning hotels: Stein Lodge, the Chateau Deer Valley, and Stein Erickson Residences, each located in Park City, Utah, within the prestigious Deer Valley ski area. The flagship property, Stein Erickson Lodge, is Utah's first and longest-running Forbes 5-star hotel and has been voted the best ski hotel in the United States for several years running. Consider these legendary resorts for your next family getaway or corporate event. For those who seek the best, there's only Stein's.
How does Solutions to Go work with companies that are looking for like a minimum wholesale agreement where they don't want the distributor to sell to dealers lower than they're selling to dealers for? Is that something you can kind of carve out, or how does that work with you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we a lot of the value of having one distributor that covers multiple territories and is that we can really help to manage your map and your MSRP for the brands across regions. It's a big issue, especially in Latin America, where you'll have people that buy products and then sell them super low in Latin
Amazon
America.
or something,
yeah, and they destroy your map process. So you
monitor that.
We can monitor. It just depends on how you have it set up. A lot of the brands monitor it themselves. If they don't and they have a need to have it monitored, we can help step in and monitor it for them and help control the marketplace. And a lot of times what happens after we find an issue relies on the brands, because we don't control the brand itself, but we just report back to them and let them know, hey, you've got a product that's being sold well under map, here's where it is, and they'll work to try to trace on where they sold the product or how it ended up in that place. We share sales reporting with brands so they can see where we're selling. Real easy, and this has been true at VoiceCom and Solutions to Go. It's real easy to control who can and cannot buy a product. So we can flag a brand that it can't be turned on unless they have explicit approval for the product. So yeah, there's a lot of controls in
Where
place.
are your distribution centers, warehouses?
So we have, in the US, we have a couple. We have one in Louisville and one in Phoenix, and then we have one in Toronto, and then basically every country in Latin America except for Venezuela has either our own facility or a partner facility that we utilize in the market.
So you've got 2 or 3 day shipping, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Wherever you're at.
Pretty much wherever, yeah.
Okay, so a couple questions for you. Where do you see white space as being in consumer electronic world over the next 5 years?
For distribution specifically, or
just for
brands?
products being invented, or where do you feel like there's a niche that you feel like might be underrepresented right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. If I knew, I'd start another business doing it probably. If I felt super confident about where it is. I think it's more about how people are buying that's interesting to me, and being in front of like where the products need to be to attract new buyers. Especially, I've got kids, so I kind of watch how my kids buy and how they experience and learn about new products. But on that note, I just think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the mobile space, which is where my specialty is, with cases and chargers and all the different stuff that go into there. We're seeing a lot of changes in regards to what's popular and what's holding up there. People going caseless, and it's interesting. But I'm super intrigued by what's happening e-commerce wise, where you've got companies like Nordstrom and Macy's and some of these retailers that haven't been big in the wireless industry, but are expanding their assortment really widely.
Department stores,
yeah. And we had, when I was at VoiceCom, that was an area that we just really cornered and owned in the category of just, let's just create these APIs where we can plug into anybody's e-commerce site and tee up a catalog of products from them. They can pick and choose what fits their brand profile that they're trying to put out, because Nordstrom's not going to carry the same products that Walmart is, even in the wireless accessory world. and it's just tremendous, like the blind drop shipping, the opportunities that we're able to open up for brands to ship all over the country and open up retailers without having to go build connections to every single one.
So you're seeing a lot of companies do the whole strategy of shops within a shop.
Yeah.
So like Circuit City, I mean, they did the bankruptcy thing probably 15 years ago, but then I know that they bought the naming rights probably 7 or 8 years ago. Now they're opening up some stores into some of these major retailers and just, leasing out some of the space. Do you feel like that's a good strategy?
It's interesting. There's some third-party labor companies that do that as well for Air Force bases or inside of Costco's and Sam's Clubs. I think it's super interesting, and I think there's a ton of opportunities in order, because it just gives you this. It helps the retailers because it reduces the amount of risk for inventory, and you have to imagine they're extracting some rent or some sort of profit share on those. But then it also, helps tee up this specialized sales force that can do assisted sales, which is also always more successful than just walking in and trying to buy something off of a peg. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the third-party labor or the store within a store concept.
So what are some mobile brands that are doing it right and consumer electronic brands that are doing it right?
So
ones to watch out for.
Yeah, I think the Circuit City one you named is really interesting. I think the third-party labor stuff that we see is like if you go into a Walmart and you're looking for mobile service, odds are that's a third-party labor. Even Target's doing it in select stores. So you go in and it looks like a Target sales associate. They're using a Target cash register, but really it's somebody that works for OSL or 2020. It's one of these third-party labor companies. The Air Force bases do the same. I think that's a really interesting concept. One of the ones that is really interesting that I dealt with when I was at IQ Metrics on the software side is Samsung. We powered the point of sale for Samsung, but Samsung didn't staff their own stores. So they have these experience stores that are staffed by third-party labor that are just run exceptionally well because they've got this team that just knows how to run retail, whereas Samsung knows how to do so many other things, but being a retailer is probably not high on the list of things that they are ambitious at being great at.
It's kind of interesting. I was listening to a pod yesterday about Apple right now, and Apple's. It looks like they're going after them. The federal government is about being a potential monopoly because they have 76% of the users in cell phones is now monopolized by Apple, and Apple's a closed system rather than Microsoft being an open system. And It's pretty amazing, though. It's a very true statement that there's not many people that don't like Apple, and it's incredible the innovation that's come out of that company. So when you kind of look at brands, like if you're going to test out a brand that comes on through Solutions to Go, how much brand recognition is important? How much do you look at maybe their Instagram following? How much do you look at just the product itself or patents? How do those different aspects play into your purchasing decisions?
Yeah, it certainly plays a part. It's a weird dichotomy because in some senses, especially here in the US, it's almost better that a brand is small than big for a distributor because then there's much more that we can offer them to help.
Oh, yeah.
And we can get in and partner with them early and help them grow. Odds are they haven't landed a big box retailer. If you have an established brand like a Belkin, like obviously they're already selling direct to almost everybody. Yeah, so there's not a whole lot of help that you're going to be able to give them outside of just moving boxes for them. So there's a little bit of that plays a part. Like we have a brand that we picked up recently called Snap, which most people haven't heard of, but if you have heard of it, you love it and you're a huge fan. It's like the Pop Sockets killer. Everybody's heard of Pop Sockets. Oh, yeah. So Snap is like a thinner, smaller, easier to use product. Their videos directly go after pop sockets, but that's an example of a brand that's a little bit newer and is making a splash. They made a big splash D2C. They have an incredible following online, but haven't had a ton of retailer success yet. Not that there hasn't been interest. There's been a ton of retailer interest, but as you know, like getting from retailer interest to actually being successful
Big
and
difference.
Funding all of this inventory and it's a long time before you start to sell it and get paid on it, especially from big box retailer. Those opportunities are super interesting for us because we can basically open the kimono and say, here's everything we can do. What are you good at doing? What do you have the teammates that are good at doing, the people on your team that you want to carve out and do internally versus where we can provide support and help. So stuff like that's super intriguing for us.
So one last question for me. What is some advice that you would give yourself, going back to the Gadget Gaurd days, now that you have all the different retail experience you have now?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I would probably have gone harder at building our own sales channels online, and really mastering what we did with our website and figuring out, just the advertising component of it and Facebook. I feel like we could have made a much bigger splash if we would have embraced Facebook at the time when it was like in its golden age. Yeah, with the pixels following everybody all over online. Like if I could change one thing, that would be it. I think it would. We had a good outcome. The brand is still doing incredible. Like it's doing better now than ever before. So definitely good outcome. I'm a big fan of the team, but I feel like our outcome would have been just supersized if we would have really honed in and focused on that. And I would like to have that skill now, and that's one area where I've just haven't been able to like really dive in. Yeah.
It's been super fun watching your journey from
Thanks.
Gadget Gaurd. Obviously worked with you quite a bit, VoiceCom, now Solutions to Go. You're obviously kind of you're a major player in a really interesting category that has so much innovation, so much going on. But anyway, thanks so much for coming on to the pod, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Maximize your sales team's potential with Volcanic Retail University. Our courses cover everything from foundational retail knowledge to advanced strategies for established brands. Go to university.volcanicretail.io and use code RWG for 30% off.